This video is brought to you by Against the Flow of Mississippi. Against the Flow of Mississippi is a book about Jake Fayard, a Marine veteran who is unhappy with the political machine running the state of Mississippi. He decides to fight the corruption from the inside. Jake will face more challenges than he ever has and will stand up for what he thinks is right. His notoriously hot temper will push him to the edge of murder, along with his friend and brother Kobe Barhanovich. Together, they will fight the system and give the power back to the citizens of Mississippi. Against the Flow of Mississippi is now available on Amazon. A link to the book will be placed in the description below. Welcome to History in the Eyes of a Southerner with your host, Anthony Allen. On this channel, we will take a journey through time and relate history to the contemporary eyes of modern America. I hope you enjoy the ride as I investigate and document the wonderful events that have shaped our present world. Alright, y'all, so this is how I'm decided to get started on McCarthyism. Watching a series on the Cold War. And that's where I made my connection. I realized that going against the grain in America causes a lot of people a lot of heartaches. Going back to when this country was founded, going back to before the Declaration of Independence. If you go back to 1773, people were unhappy about King George's, well, several acts of King George, one of which would be the Stamp Act, Tax Act, whatever you want to call it. The other would be the forget what it's called, but the act where he basically said that all colonies, we make all choices. You have nothing to say. We in Parliament are going to make the choices. Fast forward to 1775, the Boston Massacre came from that. Fast forward to 1776, Declaration of Independence. I would argue that this country was probably most free between 1783 and 1787. Pre the Constitution, to be honest with you. Now, the Bill of Rights, of course, that was ratified in 1791, gave us back a lot of freedoms. But also in the 1790s, the Alien and Sedation Act was passed. And that's what got Aaron Burr in trouble, and of course, now you're cutting into free speech. I have a problem with cutting into the First Amendment. Obviously, I'm running this YouTube channel, so I am a firm believer in the First Amendment. I like the fact that I can say that the U.S. government sucks. And I don't have to worry about being stuck in a concentration camp for my efforts, for my views, for the way I feel, for expressing those views. I have the right to have a dissenting view. Fast forward 150 years after Aaron Burr, or almost 150 years, now we have a senator, a freshman senator of no consequence from Wisconsin. This is where I start talking about Joe McCarthy. Joe McCarthy was a nobody. Complete and utter nobody. I'm going to take a step back before this, before I get into what he did and how he made this happen. In the 1930s in this country, we were in the middle of the Great Depression. People had lost literally everything. Everything they owned. People lost it in this country. There's no way around it. When you lose everything and you have nothing, you literally have nothing to lose. People were living out on the prairie, walking or driving if they had a vehicle and can afford gas, to get just a little bit further down the road, and maybe they'd get somewhere. Banks seized property. Government seized property. I mean, it was a horrible, 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 horrible time in America. And then we elect a socialist president. Now, I want y'all to think about something. This is where I have to get political here. What is socialism? At its core, socialism is redistribution of the wealth. Well, in 1913, when the federal income tax was passed, now we all have to pay income tax to the federal government. And we had, and then the 1930s brought us a lot of socialist politicians. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was definitely one. Another one a little closer to home for me would have been Huey P. Long out of Louisiana. Very, very progressive socialist. I mean, if he got what he wanted, America would have been a great example for what Venezuela would have been, long before Venezuela ever got that way. But I digress. So you have socialism. You have redistribution of the wealth. You have taxing people, taking the money from the rich, and giving it to people who are in need. My opinion is socialism is the direct opposite of the American dream, okay? The American dream, as I understand it, is I'm born, I attend school, maybe go to college, maybe I go work my ass off in a blue-collar job, I earn enough money to buy a house, and I'm doing it on my own merit, standing on my own 2 feet. That's the American dream. I'm building for myself to better myself and my family so that my daughter doesn't have to go through the struggles in life that I had to go through. So that I can pass on what is mine to my daughter. That is the American dream as I understand it. Maybe I want to start a business and employ other people and give other people the opportunity to do what I've been able to do. I'm not saying I've been able to do it because, I mean, look around, y'all. But that is my understanding of the American dream. Now, fast forward. Russia was a communist country, the Soviet Union. But they were actually socialist. They also did redistribution of the wealth, which is the same thing Franklin Delano Roosevelt did. Again, not defending socialism in any form by any means. I don't believe in it. But that's what happened. They took farms from the people and gave it back to the entire country by way of nationalism. Now, this brings up another interesting point about Russia and another interesting point of history. Russia was our ally during World War II. The big red hammer and sickle was our ally. Yes, we needed them. FDR died before the end of the war, left Truman in charge. They were still our ally up until the end of the war and just a little bit after. And that's when the split happened. Now, 1947, we have this guy out of Wisconsin named Joe McCarthy. Freshman senator. He takes his oath, just like everybody else. And he is of no consequence. Nobody knows anything about him. Nobody cares about him. All of a sudden, he's given the chair of the I believe it was the Justice Committee. Next thing you know, in 1950, he goes to the little town of Wheeling, West Virginia. And when he gets to Wheeling, West Virginia, he drops a bombshell. Boom! Drops a nuclear bomb bigger and badder than the two dropped in Japan just a few years earlier, and says 205 members of the U.S. State Department are communist agents. Then all of a sudden everybody's a communist. Communism is a bad word now. I'm not a communist either. And I'm not defending communism. Again, this is about propaganda and the First Amendment. There were a lot of people in this country that were Stalinist communist. They're wrong, but it's their right to be that way. I'm not, again, not defending communism. Next thing you know, we have the Committee on Un-American Activities. And he's pulling teachers. He's pulling people of communities. He's pulling actors. The Hollywood 10. Pulled them in there. And in later videos, I am going to put some of the hearing footage on here. This is just an overview, what I'm doing right now. Have you ever been a communist? Do you know any communists? These questions, though anybody can ask any question they want, seem to go against what the First Amendment stands for. I have the right to be a communist if I choose to. I don't have the right to do something detrimental to the safety and security of my country. But as being a member of the Communist Party, which is a political party, is that going against the security and the safety of my country? Not getting into espionage, that's a whole nother issue. I'm talking just solely being a member of the Communist Party. When he dropped that propaganda in Wheeling, West Virginia in 1950, saying that 205 people in the State Department are communists, he had absolutely no backing for that claim. None. No backing whatsoever. Nobody. He claims he had a list. Nobody has seen this list. In the last 72, 73 years, nobody has seen this list that Joe McCarthy allegedly had. That's where propaganda comes in. I'm fixing to lose the election. I need something that I can fire people up. Get you mad. Hey, did you know there are 205 people in the State Department that are members of the Communist Party? They're anti-American. Oh. Well, wait a minute. We're a little bit pissed off at Russia, so yeah, fuck those communists. That's basically what you're telling me. Again, not defending communism, certainly not defending espionage. Just because you are a communist does not mean automatically that you are guilty of espionage. That's not how this works. Joe McCarthy claimed that they were one and the same. You will see this when I post the footage of some of these interviews. The Hollywood 10. Most of them were members of the Republican Party. Same as Joe McCarthy. But what happened is a lot of them simply said, prove it. I have the right to face my accusers. Again, Bill of Rights, Sixth Amendment. I don't think they had the option to take legally they had the option to take the Fifth Amendment. We all know the Fifth Amendment. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right not to incriminate yourself. You ask me, hey Anthony, did you murder Joe Blow on the street? And I look at you and I say, I'm not incriminating myself. You have the right to do this. You have the right to say, I'm not incriminating myself. It's part of what makes this country so great. But in a meeting like that, if you were to do that, you would have been ostracized. That's what happened to a lot of these guys in Hollywood. That's what happened to the Hollywood 10. They were blacklisted for years. Some of them never recovered in their careers. I asked you if you were a communist. You didn't give me an answer, so you must be a communist. I guess the Fifth Amendment's right out the window. This is in the 1950s. Granted, there was a lot of fucked up shit going on back then. And don't even get me started on J. Edgar Hoover. But does that sound American to anybody? Does that sound like anything remotely close to what this country was founded on? This is 90 years after the ratification of the 14th Amendment. You know, due process. Though they weren't exactly on trial, they were on trial in the court of public opinion, number one. And number two, they were on trial. They were on trial in the Senate chamber. Y'all think about it. I'm going to delve a whole lot deeper into this. Y'all keep watching. Thank you for watching. History in the Eyes of a Southerner. Your host, Anthony Allen. Good morning.